F1's post-season testing in Abu Dhabi has barely begun, and already we're seeing something that can only be described as absolute bedlam. A frenzy of last-minute adjustments, surprise performances, and rumours so wild they'd make the silly season blush. The dust has only just settled on the thrilling final race of the 2024 Formula One season. The teams are packing up their garages, and the World Championship trophies have found their new homes. Normally, this is the moment when everyone in the paddock takes a breath, steps back, and reflects on the season gone by. The atmosphere in the pit lane usually shifts toward a calm, reflective mood, as drivers, engineers, and team principals rest after a grueling calendar. Fans might be catching their breath, savouring the highs and lows of the season finale, famous overtakes, bungled strategies, the heartbreak for some, and the triumph for others. Typically, the narrative would be straightforward. We end one season, we get a short lull, and then we start gearing up mentally for the next. Simple enough. But this year, not a chance. Instead of a quiet off-season, we've slammed straight into the post-season test in Abu Dhabi. The transition has been seamless, like someone forgot to hit the pause button. Engines have roared back to life before the echo of the final checkered flag has even faded. Mechanics who had hoped to catch a well-deserved break are still turning wrenches. Engineers are still hunched over data. Journalists are scrambling to understand driver lineups, sponsor commitments, and subtle hints from team bosses. And you, as a dedicated F1 fan, find yourself with zero downtime. The show goes on relentlessly, and it's not just going on, it's careening off the rails with chaos and drama. The call to adventure this time is the post-season test itself. Post-season tests were once a fairly predictable affair, a chance for teams to gather data on new parts and give fresh talent a run in the car. We'd see seasoned drivers tinker with next year's setup, young drivers taste the apexes in a top-tier machine, and everyone just calmly understand the early dynamics of the upcoming season's regulations or upgrades. But this year, the test has become a pressure cooker of storylines. The stakes have never felt higher because the 2025 season looms, and with it come monumental changes in driver lineups, technical regulations, and behind-the-scenes politics. The test isn't just a test, it's an audition, a statement of intent, and a display of who is really backing whom. Why the intensity? Well, look at what's happening. We've got drivers switching allegiances in ways that seemed unthinkable a few months ago. Notable among them is Carlos Sainz, who shocked the paddock with his move to Williams, of all teams. Yes, Williams, a squad that, until recently, languished at the back of the grid, struggling for points and identity. Suddenly, with fresh financial injections and a new technical direction, Williams is looking like the team to watch, especially with a proven race winner like Sainz at the wheel. He isn't just hopping in for a joyride. Reports hint at serious intent, strong financial backing, and a hungry engineering team ready to break into the midfield, maybe even more. The post-season test is our first glimpse of Sainz in blue and white, carving apexes and setting meaningful lap times, sending a signal to the entire paddock that Williams might be a sleeper threat. And then there's Yuki Tsunoda, a driver who's always carried a certain flair, but often found himself overshadowed by the bigger names in the Red Bull driver stable. This test marks his first outing with the senior Red Bull team's machinery, an opportunity shrouded in anticipation. Rumours have swirled that Red Bull might be reconsidering their second seat. Tsunoda's performance in these few laps, the data he provides, and his ability to adapt quickly could shape the power dynamics at the sport's most dominant team. Can Tsunoda show he deserves a shot in Red Bull's top car? The post-season test is where that story begins. And the chatter up and down the paddock says that everyone's watching his every move. Now, here's where we get to the heart of the madness. This test session has taken on a life of its own. creating new tensions and crises where we least expected them. Let's talk first about the intrigue swirling around team finances and sponsorship arrangements. The modern F1 landscape is as much about money as it is about engineering genius. Rumours suggest certain drivers have secured their seats not just through talent, but also through lucrative financial backing. We're hearing that deals were inked behind closed doors, influential sponsors tugged on the strings, and some teams have bent more than a few rules of tradition to secure their futures. The result? A paddock rife with suspicion and accusations of favouritism. Fans argue online, are we watching pure racing merit, or have some seats been purchased outright? The test results will go a long way to validating or negating these whispers. If a well-backed driver underperforms, what happens then? And speaking of tension, look at Red Bull's predicament. Sergio Perez has, for the first time in his career, publicly admitted feeling the heat. His seat, long thought secure, is now the subject of intense speculation. The Red Bull machine has historically not hesitated to swap drivers when expectations weren't met. With Tsunoda testing and Daniel Ricciardo's name still floating around, not to mention Liam Lawson's impressive form in recent substitute appearances, the environment at Red Bull seems less stable than it has in years. Imagine the internal pressure. Max Verstappen is the undisputed king of that castle, a 2-, 3-, or 4-time champion, depending on when you're reading this, with the team built around him. That second seat, a notoriously tough environment, demands performance under duress. Tsunoda's test lap times, his feedback, and the impression he leaves on Christian Horner and Helmut Marko could be the deciding factor in the biggest driver move of the off-season. Suddenly, the post-season test is no longer just a data-gathering exercise. It's a job interview where entire careers can be made or broken. Meanwhile, at the Ferrari garage, the absence of Lewis Hamilton is turning heads. Wait, did we say Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari? The rumour mill went into overdrive earlier this year when whispers emerged that Hamilton might consider a bold move to the Scuderia to round off his illustrious career. Some tabloids ran wild with the story, others dismissed it as fantasy. But now that Hamilton is conspicuously missing from the testing lineup, some fans and pundits are asking questions. Is this absence a hint that some arrangement is in the works for 2025 or beyond? Or is it just logistical circumstance, with Hamilton enjoying a rare break? In a world where every small detail can hint at a major shake-up, this kind of mystery throws gasoline on the fire of speculation. The midfield is no calmer. Teams like Aston Martin and McLaren, which often find themselves locked in fierce point-by-point battles throughout the season, are shaking up their driver lineups. We have rookies stepping into these cars hoping to impress team principals and sponsors. We have seasoned veterans looking to reassert their dominance and prove they're still worthy of a top seat. This mixture of rookies, veterans, and newly placed drivers forms a perfect storm of ego, ambition, and uncertainty. The result is a test session that feels like a qualifying shootout rather than a calm, data-driven affair. Each lap feels like a statement. Look at me. Look at what I can do for your team. But where the real madness kicks in is in the fan reaction. The testing sessions themselves are somewhat closed off to the public. While official data is sparse, tidbits leak out, sector times, unofficial timing sheets, and insider gossip from journalists stalking the paddock. These scraps of information explode online. Fans are dissecting every rumour, every supposed radio message, every whisper from a team insider. And the reactions are more polarised than ever. Some fans dismiss the entire exercise as meaningless data gathering. Don't believe the hype, it's just testing, they say. Others see conspiracy at every turn. Driver X is being sabotaged. Team Y sold their soul to keep sponsor Z happy. The controversy is fueled by the vacuum of official information, allowing speculation to run rampant. factions of supporters lash out at each other. Some think Tsunoda is the future, a no-nonsense racer who's done miracles in subpar machinery and could shine in the Red Bull seat. Others claim he lacks the maturity and character for the top team. Some believe Sainz at Williams is the start of a comeback for the legendary British team, while skeptics say it's all smoke and mirrors, that Sainz's performance is being artificially hyped to attract sponsors and shift narratives. The more polarizing the takes, the more engagement. Everyone's talking about it, even the casual fans who normally tune out until the official car launches next year. As the test days unfold, we start to see patterns emerge. Preliminary data, though never officially confirmed, suggests that Sainz in the Williams looks surprisingly comfortable. He's reportedly praised the team's direction and the feeling of the chassis. Insiders say he clocked a few eye-raising laps that, when adjusted for fuel loads and tyres, could put him firmly in midfield contention. If Williams can sustain this development curve, the coming season might not see them scraping the bottom, but genuinely challenging teams like Alpine, AlphaTauri, or even Aston Martin. This could be the reward for Williams' quiet determination and the influx of technical and financial support they've mustered. The post-season test, in this sense, has become their victory lap of sorts, a confirmation they're heading in the right direction. On the Red Bull side, Tsunoda reportedly delivered consistent, clean runs and provided feedback that impressed the engineers. While he may not have immediately matched Verstappen's legendary pace, no one expected him to. His job was to show that he could adapt quickly, offer insightful feedback, and handle the pressure. According to Paddock Whispers, he passed that test. That's a reward for Tsunoda. Not a guaranteed seat, but a foot in the door, a reminder to the Red Bull management that they have options. Now, Perez must step up his game, or he risks losing the coveted second seat. For Tsunoda, even the mere consideration that he could jump into one of the most competitive cars on the grid is a massive career boost. As for Hamilton's absence, while the rumours swirl, the team principals remain tight-lipped. Yet, the silence could be interpreted as strategy. Perhaps no news is, in fact, news in itself. Whatever Hamilton's reasons, the post-season test's overall frenzy means the spotlight shifts constantly. Today it's on Tsunoda, tomorrow on Sainz, the next day on Perez, and so forth. Still, fans can't help but wonder what it all means for the lineup in 2025. If Hamilton is playing a long game, this could be the calm before a major announcement. The rest of the grid begins to settle into their new roles. Rookies gain invaluable track time, veterans experiment with new setups and procedures. Some teams confirm their development paths, others realise they've got significant work to do before the first winter test of 2025. It's a period of adaptation and learning, a quick glimpse of what's to come. By the time the last hours of testing wind down, the madness begins to recede, replaced by a more familiar pattern. Engineers pack up laptops, mechanics store equipment. The paddock's frantic energy slowly morphs into a more predictable off-season hum. Deals might still be inked behind closed doors, and rumours will persist, but the immediate chaos of the post-season test gives way to the ordinary world once more. Teams know what they must work on during the winter break. Drivers return to the gym and the simulator. Sponsors realign their strategies. Journalists compile their notes, ready to dish out their big exclusives during the months ahead. For the fans, this return to normalcy is actually a relief. After days of speculation and heightened emotion, it's nice to catch a breath. Yet, the storylines uncovered during this test will set the tone for the next season. Williams fans, newly energised by Sainz's positive showing, will spend the off-season daring to dream. Red Bull fans will argue among themselves about whether Tsunoda truly deserves that seat, or if Perez, Ricciardo, or even Lawson should get another chance. The mystery around Hamilton's future at Ferrari, or anywhere else, will linger in the back of everyone's mind. The controversies stoked by the testing will keep burning online. Some fans will claim that the testing drama was overblown by certain media outlets hungry for clicks and controversy. Others will say that they saw right through the narrative from the start. Yet, a large portion of the audience, those who live and breathe Formula One, will embrace the drama as part of the show. After all, Formula One is theatre as much as it is sport, and the off-season is never truly quiet. Looking ahead, the teams now must transform the lessons learned in Abu Dhabi into tangible gains on the track next year. For Williams, that means building on Sainz's momentum and ensuring the car's development matches his talent. For Red Bull, it's about maintaining an internal equilibrium, deciding whether to trust a known quantity or gamble on fresh blood. For others, like Aston Martin, McLaren and Ferrari, it's about measuring progress, understanding the pecking order, and preparing to take the fight to the top teams. This test might not change championship standings or hand out trophies, but it has already shaped the narrative heading into 2025. As we settle back into the ordinary world, we also reflect on the importance of these tests as storytelling devices. They're not just about new parts and fresh rubber on the tarmac. They're about putting pressure on drivers who might be on the brink of losing their seat, giving fresh faces a chance to shine, and confirming whether whispered paddock rumours carry any weight. The post-season test just gave us a fascinating glimpse into the undercurrents that will define next season. These undercurrents may be quieting down now, but don't be fooled. They're still there, churning beneath the surface, ready to explode once the season finally kicks off. One aspect that can't be ignored is the way fans responded to all this. The digital echo chamber magnified every piece of information and speculation. Some fans complained about the hype, calling certain outlets out for sensationalism, accusing them of turning minor changes into complete chaos to drive engagement. Others found genuine excitement in the drama and intrigue. They argued that any off-season story is better than none, that these flashes of uncertainty keep the sport alive year-round. Who is right? Well, that depends on your perspective. Formula One thrives on passion, and if passionate debates keep that flame alive during the quieter months, perhaps even the so-called chaos has its purpose. The tension around financial backing also left an imprint. Fans debate whether the presence of moneyed backers distorts the meritocracy of the sport. Some defend the system, saying that F1 is a blend of pure competition and market forces. No surprise that money talks. Others are disgusted, longing for a pure contest of skill rather than a battle of checkbooks. But this debate isn't new, and it won't vanish overnight. The test just reminded us that in F1, talent and money are often intertwined, and extracting one from the other is nearly impossible. Now, as the final bits of gear are loaded onto trucks, we return to a kind of lull. The off-season, shorter than ever, will still offer a few weeks of quiet before the unveiling of new liveries, the first winter tests, and the eventual lights out for the next championship. During this hiatus, teams will analyse the data collected, refine their strategies, and negotiate last-minute deals. Drivers will rest physically, but their minds will remain engaged, thinking about what was learned, what needs to be done, and what goals are possible in 2025. The fans too re-enter their ordinary world. They'll return to message boards, social media, and comment sections to voice their interpretations of what the post-season test meant. Some will declare that it was all smoke and mirrors, no actual chaos. Others will remain convinced it signalled a seismic shift in the landscape of F1 power. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. After all, how can a few days of testing completely redefine a sport where long-term development and strategic consistency still matter most? Yet, the beauty of Formula One is how every incident, no matter how small, can ripple through the ecosystem of the sport. A driver's impressive test lap can lead a team to reconsider their future lineup. a sponsor's quiet murmur can ignite rumours of a new alliance. A star driver's unexplained absence can fuel 1,000 theories. This is what keeps F1 fans glued to their screens, even in the off-season. The knowledge that the next big revelation could come from anywhere. As the final words settle, let's acknowledge that the so-called complete madness of the post-season test isn't about earth-shattering revelations or changing the grid overnight. It's about the undercurrent of tension, the subtle shifts in dynamics, and the seeds of future narratives. Carlos Sainz at Williams might just be the start of a renaissance for a historic team. Yuki Tsunoda testing in a Red Bull might not guarantee him a seat, but it proves he's at least in the conversation. Financial backing might continue to tilt the scales, but undeniable talent often finds a way to shine through. In the end, this post-season test gave us plenty to chew on. We might not see Hamilton in red just yet, but the idea is out there, lingering. We might not have absolute clarity on the Red Bull second seat, but the tension will make every comment from Horner or Marco next year all the more scrutinised. We might not have a full picture of how the midfield will shake out, but the hints suggest that next season's battles could be tighter and more unpredictable than we've seen in a while. So here we are, back in a relatively calm moment, but armed with a wealth of subplots and mysteries to keep us company until the racing begins anew. That's the ordinary world of a Formula One fan. After every storm of speculation, we settle back into waiting, wondering, and anticipating. The off-season may be short, but the storylines generated in these testing days will echo through the garages and paddocks, fueling discussions and debates right up until the first roar of engines in 2025. If you've stuck around this long, you're likely as fascinated by the inner workings of F1 as we are. The post-season test might not hand out points or trophies, but it provides something arguably just as valuable: insight. Insight into the minds of team principals who must juggle performance, politics, and profit. Insight into the psyche of drivers fighting for their futures. And insight into how a passionate fan base can turn the slightest rumour into a raging inferno of speculation. As the conversation continues, consider this. What do you think the post-season test really means for the future of your favourite team or driver? Are we witnessing the first chapter of a new era? Sainz elevating Williams, Tsunoda becoming a real contender, and Red Bull facing a crossroads? Or is this all smoke, mirrors, and silly season-style storytelling? Let's see what unfolds, because in F1, the truth often only emerges when the lights go out and the racing begins. In the meantime, let's enjoy the calm now that the chaos of the post-season test has settled, because we all know this quiet won't last. Formula One never stays ordinary for long. Each day brings us closer to the winter break announcements, the car reveals, the first pre-season tests, and finally, the roar of the engines in a whole new year. The story never ends. It only pauses, waiting for the next chapter to begin.